Hello, this is Tracy, and this is a dedicated look at the Westergun. Parts, specs, variants, and performance, which ones are the best performers. It's also by default a little bit of a look at prefixes, item scores, hidden stats, anointments, and how Gearbox can have a game with a gazillion different guns, all through the lens of my having acquired way too many Westerguns. Special thanks to Agent Lomax, who has been doing a series of videos on non-unique weapons for each manufacturer. His video on Mali 1 SMGs help clarify some issues with Westergun parts I had. So, Westergun is a legendary Mali 1 SMG that, despite being a dedicated drop from only one source, is arguably the easiest to obtain legendary weapon in the game, not counting DLC gear. It drops from Private Beans in Dilo's Remorse Cemetery on Athenas after completing Ava's Invasion of Privacy side quest. On normal mode, No Mayhem drop rate is probably in the 20 to 40% range. On TVHM Mayhem 1 or higher, it's pretty much a guaranteed drop. Beans also drops the front loader shield and the Trevinator shotgun, although much less frequently. Now, while not a meta boss killer, the Westergun is a solid performing weapon noted for decent damage, high elemental damage for an SMG, no discernible charge time, which is unique for a Mali 1 weapon, and a significant splash damage radius. If you can't get a Cutsman or a Kibsworth, a good Westergun will do in a pinch. Okay. As with most Mali 1 weapons, the Westergun comes with two mode switchable elements. Westerguns come in combinations of all 5 elements. There are no non-elemental variants. Its red flavored text reads, "I believe you, but my Tommy gun don't." This is a reference to a scene in the 1992 film Home Alone 2, Lost in New York. It's also the name of a song by Ghostman. The name likely refers to a traditional type of pole injector used for vaccinating livestock from a safe distance called the Westergun. It was designed by a Canadian rancher. Westerguns have undergone at least 2 buffs since game release, one around the end of September 2019, buff damage 25%, and fire rate 20% for all Mali 1 guns. A later update on 17 October 2019 buffed the Westergun specifically 25% damage. All Westerguns come with the same body, barrel, and barrel accessory, plus the same part or parts that convey the 2 elements. The body is the standard Mali 1 SMG body. The barrel looks identical to the Nebula barrel, although the stat card lists a plus 25% damage bonus in addition to the Nebula's standard plus 75 splash damage radius. This might be from the October buff. This is the only obvious listed difference in parts between the Westergun and other non-legendary Mali 1 SMGs, except for the special paint job. The elemental parts are sometimes obscured by a body accessory in the profile parts view. However, they are visible when you rotate the gun in 3D during non-part inspection. Optional and/or variable parts include 3 body accessories, 4 different sights, 2 different magazines, 2 different grips, 2 stocks, and the grip accessory, which can only be found on this circular grip. This table lists all the variable parts as well as any bonuses or penalties for each part. Bonuses are in green and penalties in red. I'm not going to list them one by one. You can pause the video if you want. I'll touch upon key parts and how they affect things as I go. All Westerguns come with either 2 or 3 body accessories, meaning there are 4 different body accessory combinations. That leaves 1 of 4 sights, 1 of 2 magazines, 1 of 2 grips, and 1 of 2 stocks. The grip accessory, as I mentioned, only fits in the circular grip and gives binary variants their 2 rounds per shot capability. Now, these part choices result in a maximum of 192 different combinations, 192 different Westerguns. As of this post, I've laid eyes on 175 of them. Okay, this does not include elemental pairings, of which there are 10, or anointments. If you factor in elemental pairs, that results in 1,920 different Westerguns. Additionally, there are at least 22 universal weapon anointments, 6 siren weapon specific anointments, 7 operative anointments, 7 gunner, 8 beastmaster, and 15 weapon specific terror anointments for a total of at least 65. Factor in possible anointments results in 124,800 different Westerguns. Let me say that again, 124,800. There are 13 different Westergun prefixes: apt, binary, compressing, dangerous, escalating, hazardous, mocking, pertinent, stark, sublime, superfluous, unescapable, and vivid. Westerguns only come with a single prefix. Now, these are all the known prefixes currently available on Mali 1 SMGs, except for eviscerating and sneering. The eviscerating prefix comes on the Nebula as well as a few other unique SMGs with blades and a corresponding melee bonus. No Westergun has a bladed accessory. Specific part combinations apply to specific variants. Certain parts always appear on, or never appear on, specific variants. Stark variants, for instance, never come with a 2.9 power sight and always come with the third body accessory. You will not, however, find any Stark Westerguns with a combination of body accessory 2, a circular grip, and a split stock. Those are all sublime variants. App variants always have body accessories 2 and 3, a curved grip, and a split stock, etc. Now, except for the binary designation, prefixes do not appear to designate specific abilities. I have sorted my spreadsheet on every weapon stat plus calculated base DPS, combined base damage, and .DPS. There is no apparent correlation. Okay, in terms of possible combinations, binaries have the most, 64. That's a third of all possible variants, followed by Stark, 56, Sublime, 18, and Mocking, also 18. At the other end of the list, Dangerous, Escalating, Pertinent, Superfluous, and Vivid all appear to only come in 2 distinct combinations of parts. Now, in terms of ease of acquisition, however, Stark is easily the most common variant. They appear to drop approximately 50% of the time. Basically, if you go for private beans, half the time you'll get a Stark. Westerguns have 3 baseline item scores at any given level, 2 each for both single shot and binary variants. The higher single shot score and the lower binary variant score are identical. At level 50, for instance, the 3 base scores are 536, 546, and 556. 536 and 546 are for the single shot variants, 546 and 556 for the binary. Okay, at level 53, they are 563, 573, and 583. At level 18, 248, 258, and 268. If you do the math, every level is 9 points higher than the previous. Now, the only difference between the high and low scores are the number of body accessories. Lower scored variants have only 2 body accessories, doesn't matter which 2. Higher scored variants have all 3 body accessories, and that's weird. I have no idea why that is, doesn't make sense to me, but that's what it is. All Westerguns can come with anointments, including Terra. An anointment adds 25 points to a Westergun base item score. It doesn't matter what anointment or what level. What does this all tell me? Unless you're leveling up or playing the game for the first time, ignore item score. Now, I don't know if any of this is indicative of all or other weapons or gear. I've yet to look closely at other things through that lens, but I'll hopefully get around to it. Base damage-wise, binary and single-shot variants have 4 different base damage numbers depending upon part combinations. The actual numbers vary depending upon weapon level, but the ratios remain the same. Single-shot variant damage can be approximately 90%, 95%, 110%, or 150%, that's 115, of the base figure, while binary variant damage can be 69%, 72%, 84%, or 88% of the base. The binary damage figures do not include the 2 times multiplier. Now, the base figure, 100%, never actually appears on any variant because, as should be evident from these numbers, the modifiers for the 8 different part combinations that affect base damage for single shot, for binary never work out to 100%. For comparison purposes, however, the base damage before part modifiers for any level 50 Westergun is approximately 583. When I get to performance and talk about min-maxing, I will be referring to DPS as a percentage of whatever this base damage is for a particular level. Okay. Elemental dot proc chance is always 19% for all Westerguns, fire, shock, corrosion, radiation. Elemental dot damage is always a percentage of the gun's base damage figure modified by parts where appropriate. Okay, the base percentage is 194% with specific parts, body accessory 1 and or the 1-piece stock, increasing that percentage to 213 or 235%. If you divide the elemental dot damage figure listed on any card by the base damage figure, you will get one of these 3 percentages. These 3 percentages are also the possible cryo efficiencies for cryo-equipped Westerguns. All Westerguns have a listed splash damage radius of bonus of plus 75 or plus 90. The plus 75 is inherent in the barrel, which is the same for all Westerguns. The extra 15 is due to a 20% splash damage radius increase provided by the 2.2 power sight. Accuracy. Single shot variants have listed accuracy percentages of 74, 72, 71, and 69. Accuracy is modified by body accessory 3 and the choice of grip. Binary variants also have only two. Binary variants only have two, 66 and 63, as they utilize only the curved grip. And the binary accessory itself decreases accuracy by 21%. That said, I personally have never noticed any difference between 63% accuracy on the low end and 70% on the high when it comes to consistently hitting a target. By the same token, I don't personally see a big difference between any of the four sights. The 2.9 power zoom sight may make longer range targets a little bit easier to deal with, but that's about it. The stats some sights modify are more important, and none of those mods have anything to do with accuracy. Handling is always 58%, which is odd, because I always assumed that handling had to do with, among other things, weapon sway. But there's one variable part of a Westergun that affects weapon sway, and yet this has no effect on handling. Since handling is always 58%, okay? And since it's always the same, I'm not going to mention handling again. Okay. Reload speeds. There are 4 listed reload speeds, 2.3, 2.4, 2.9, and 3.0 seconds. The iron sight, however, is the only part with a listed modifier to reload speed, in this case, plus 5%. This is because base reload speed is conveyed by the magazine, which is not self-evident. Okay, it's implicit. Base reload speed for the smaller magazine, 24 round for single shot, 26 binary, is 2.4 seconds. The larger magazine, 44 or 46 rounds, is 3.0. The smaller magazine is 25% faster to reload than the larger, which will become important here. Rate of fire, base rate of fire is 6.30 shots per second. This could be boosted to 6.62 or 6.95, as both the rectangular grip and split stock each can increase rate of fire by 5%. I've already covered magazine size. Okay, as stated up front, the Westergun is a solid performer, and it's extremely useful during leveling up. Again, it's not really a bossing gun, but it is able to hold its own in many Mayhem 4 situations with the right anointments and Vault Hunter build. Its lack of charge time and good splash damage make it easier to handle than probably any other Molly 1 SMG. There's no learning curve as with weapons with an actual charge time or unusual firing pattern like the Cutsman. Okay, I've already mentioned differences in action handling not really coming into play, at least not to me. So this is essentially an elemental energy bolt weapon. The rounds are not lightning fast, but they have trajectories that are easy to follow. You can watch the rounds as they travel and adjust your aim on the fly as needed. Now, some enemies can and will sidestep to avoid rounds, and others are just fast moving to begin with, but other weapons have rounds as slow or slower. You just learn to deal with it. Okay? Splash damage rates can also make up for some of that. The gun does not fare as well against flying targets, but lots of guns have that issue. Stop wasting SMG ammo and get a shotgun. Okay, before I talk about the best performing Westerguns, a couple of caveats. Number one, I define performance based on DPS, damage per second. If you don't fully understand DPS, I did a short video on what it is and how to calculate it. It's linked in the description below. As I said in the last section, I pay very little attention to accuracy and handling because, based on my own experience, and I've used this gun a lot, there's no real difference between the highest and lowest accuracy figures. Okay. Number three, calculating DPS involves plugging in the appropriate stats, base damage, rate of fire, reload speed, and magazine size into a formula and doing the math. If you want to include damage over time, you're going to also need elemental damage figures. Now, all these stats for each variant are fixed regardless of level, except base damage and elemental damage. And elemental damage is directly tied to base damage. So there's two ways to get base and elemental damage stats for a gun. One, pull them directly from the stat cards. And this is what I was doing initially. Calculate DPS without and with damage over time, both raw numbers and expressed as a percentage of the base damage number for level 50. That's what this is on my spreadsheet here. Okay. This only works, however, for guns I've seen. I can't rank variants I've never seen this way. I can't tell you what the best performing gun is if there's a chance I've not actually encountered it. There are gaps in the data for unseen variants when you do it this way. The other way is to use the built-in part modifiers and do the math to calculate relative damage levels, which I mentioned doing earlier. 90%, 95, 110, 115 of the base for single shot, 69, 72, 84, and 88% for binary variants. This allowed me to calculate DPS for every single variant as a relative percentage. However, when I compared these percentages to those calculated using stats from actual Westerguns I'd seen or collected, There were a few minor differences in the numbers, not huge, on the order of less than 0.5%, and only when I factor in elemental damage and only for some binary variants. Okay, this is because Gearbox rounds off a lot of the underlying numbers when displaying stats on the cards and in-game if you played the game. The result is that a few binary variants appeared in slightly different places on the list. So when I talk about top performers, there's a wiggle room when the guns are close to each other in the stack. These performance differences between those variants, however, are almost negligible. You know, if you can get one close to another one, just it's not a big deal for one to be slightly above the other one. So with that in mind, the highest performing Westergun, ignoring anointments, depends on our definition of performance. Do we care only about base DPS, or do we factor in elemental damage over time? Now, if all you care about is base damage, get a binary, any binary variant. Okay, the highest performing binary variant Westergun, 24-round magazine, 1.7 power sight, and a split stock, has a base DPS value of approximately 527% of the base damage figure. In other words, with sustained fire, reload, and continuing firing, this variant will do 527% of whatever the base damage number is for that level of Westergun every second. The lowest performing binary variant does 484%. By comparison, the highest single shot variant, a Stark Westergun, tops out at about 473%. Now, if you want maximum damage, including damage over time, look for a Stark or Hazardous variant with body accessory 1, a 24-round magazine, a rectangular grip, and a 1.7 power sight, and a one-piece stock. This part combination produces the highest combined base damage and dot DPS figure, approximately 731% of the base. Okay, a tree of binary variants, however, are right behind at 721, which is pretty close. This is followed by two more Starks and another Hazardous at about 719, and it goes down from there. Also, remember about my calculations and wiggle room. Okay, why include damage over time, and why do binary variant levels go down when we include it? Okay. The Westergun's decent rate of fire combined with a 19% dot proc chance means that you will usually proc damage over time with sustained fire. Even the lowest rate of fire of 6.30 shots per second means an average of 1.2 dot procs per second. Okay, the trick is to get damage over time to proc as soon as possible, preferably with the first round that hits. Okay, the sooner you can proc dot, the more damage over time will contribute to your damage output overall. Now, if you have skills or other gear that boost elemental chance, you will proc a dot effect earlier, and dot damage will be or will figure in more heavily. So it all depends on your Vault Hunter and build. Now, because damage over time is tied to base weapon damage per round, and binary variants reduce the base damage of each round in exchange for the ability to fire 2 rounds at once, they have lower damage over time figures than their single shot counterpoints. That's why they move around in the rankings when we figure damage over time. Now, the top performers in both groups, whether it's base DPS or DPS plus dot, have specific parts you want to look for. Some of those parts they have in common. These are the parts you want to look for. Now, the most important is the small magazine, which boosts base damage by 10% per round and reloads 25% faster than the larger magazine. The larger magazine not only reloads slower, it does 10% less base damage. That's a 20% swing. The larger magazine's longer time between reloads does not make up for the reduced damage and slower reload. So if you have a choice, always get the smaller magazine. Next, look for the 1.7 power sight, which boosts base damage by 10% per round. Okay, if you can't get a 1.7 power sight, get the iron sight, which slightly decreases reload time, followed by the 2.2 power sight, which slightly increases splash damage radius. Okay, beyond that, it all depends on whether you want just base DPS or you're going to include damage over time. Body Accessory 1 and the one-piece stock each boost elemental damage by 10%. If you don't care about dot, this doesn't matter, go for the split stock. You'll lose 10% elemental damage boost, but gain 5% to rate of fire, which will boost DPS. Okay. The rectangular grip increases rate of fire by 5%, which increases base DPS. The circular grip increases actually by 10%, but as already stated, I think differences in accuracy don't matter. Okay. More importantly, the binary grip accessory, which only fits in the circular grip, increases both adjusted base damage and magazine size. Now, the 10% magazine size increase is not enough to boost performance. Firing 2 rounds per shot means the effective magazine size is cut in half, meaning you reload more often, okay, meaning lower DPS. On the other hand, while the accessory decreases damage per round by 24%, 2 rounds per shot effectively increases base damage per shot by 52%. One more note, if all these parts are equal except for body accessory 3, if one gun has it and the other doesn't, get it. It increases projectile speed by 30%. That's not much. It's not noticeable to me, but it can only help. Okay. So that's the gun or guns you should look for, the parts you want to look for if you want to maximize DPS based on the parts. But remember, this is Borderlands 3, not Borderlands 2. In Borderlands 2, maximizing performance meant getting the right parts. That was part of the meta. In Borderlands 3, the meta currently is anointments. If you get a gun with the right anointment, parts aren't as important. The difference between the highest performing Westergun, base DPS-wise, is about 33%. If you factor in damage over time, it's only about 25%. Most anointments that boost base or elemental damage exceed those percentages by a significant margin. Okay, these are not all of them, just the ones that I picked out that have a direct tie to base and or elemental gun damage. Now, most of the footage I've been showing is a level 53 Stark variant with plus 250% damage after phase cast, but it's not the one with the best parts that I highlight. Okay, it does 682% of the base damage per second before you figure in the anointment. It's down here in the stack. I'm still looking for that top performer with all the right parts, the right elements, and the right anointment. And I may not find it before the next level cap increase. I mean, I only got this one recently. Prior to it, I was using a level 51, also not the best parts. And in both cases, I did and continue to do just fine. Okay, part of what works is the build. Yes, the gun and the build complement each other, but the anointment is doing the bulk of the work. Also, the odds of getting a God Roll weapon Westergun are about 1 in 42,000. So as with any other weapon, keep an eye out for better parts, but use the one with the best anointment for your build. So that's it, okay? It's a good gun. Try it out, especially if you can get one with an anointment that complements your build. If you have a choice of parts, now you know what to look for, okay? Leave me a like if you're so feel inclined. Drop me a comment. In any case, thanks for watching.